I was 23 when they burned my world. New. Antioch wasn't just another colony. It was home. I was born there, bled there. Buried my mother in its red soil. We were the edge of humanity's reach, just a speck in the Orion Rift, surrounded by stars we hadn't yet claimed, but we were. Peaceful, farmers, miners, engineers, we didn't have fleets, we didn't have weapons, they came at dawn, no warning. No transmission, just ships black as oil, shaped like daggers falling out of FTL with no intent but annihilation. The sky went red in seconds. My father had taken me to the fusion plant that morning. He was head of systems always. Showed me how things worked. I remember the hum of the turbines, the taste of stale coffee from his old tin mug, the way he laughed when I told him I wanted to leave the colony someday and fly with the Earth Navy. Then came the sirens. We ran to the comms tower, but the signals were dead. The satellites weren't responding. Within minutes, the power grid was down. EMP blasts cooking half the systems in town. Then came the first strike. I watched from the roof as a plasma round turned the schoolhouse to slag. I'll never forget the sound of the children screaming. By the time the militia organized, it was already too late. The attackers, Gorvaks, we learned later, weren't to negotiate or conquer. They were here to erase. One of them landed. 8 ft tall, scaled skin, mandibles like cleavers. It moved through our streets like a god, burned families alive, smashed indoors and dragged people out. I tried to fight, I really did, picked up a pulse rifle from a dead guard, fired until it overheated. I think it laughed before knocking me into the side of a freight hauler. When I woke up, everything was ash, bodies lined the street like broken puppets. My father was one of them, face half gone, one arm still clutched around that stupid mug of his. I buried him under a steel sheet, shaking so hard I couldn't keep the shovel still. That was the last time I cried. Something in me broke that day and never healed. They didn't stay long, the Gorvak. 2 hours, maybe 3, long enough to leave a crater where New Antioch used to be. Then they jumped out of the system as if we were ants they'd stepped on by accident. Earth didn't respond fast enough. By the time the transmission reached the Sol command relay, we were already gone. One colony out of hundreds, a tragic loss, they said. A report filed, a moment of silence broadcast across the core worlds. But I didn't want silence. I wanted war. It took me 6 years to rise through the Earth fleet. I joined with nothing, no family, no contacts, just my name and the fire behind my eyes. The officers call me obsessive. The trainers said I was unstable. Maybe I was. I didn't care. I climbed ranks faster than I should have. Tactical school, fleet operations, command track. Every simulator, I broke the top scores. Every war game, I turned victories into massacres. I wasn't training to protect anyone, I was preparing to destroy. Then came the turning point. The high command found something, a signal traced back to the Gorvak's home region. They brought it to the Senate, debated, delayed, the usual bureaucratic dance, but something shifted this time. Maybe it was the footage from New Antioch. Maybe it was the sobbing messages of the few survivors, or maybe it was just politics. Either way, they approved it. Operation Final Dawn, Earth's vengeance, wasn't going to be a warning shot. It would be an extinction-level statement. We built 500,000 warships, half of them automated, All of them equipped with planet crackers, tactical nukes, cannons, AI-assisted kill matrices, no diplomacy, no outreach, just coordinates and targets. And they gave me command. Not because they trusted me, but because they knew I'd finish it. No mercy, no hesitation, just war. We emerged from FTL like a tidal wave of metal and death, 500,000 warships stretching across sectors, each one locked into synchronized formation, each one carrying payloads designed not for warning, not for occupation, but for complete biological and planetary eraser. The bridge of my command vessel, the ISV Revenant, was a cathedral of silence. Everyone knew what this was. There were no orders to review, no ethical debates to entertain. We weren't a rescue fleet. We weren't saviors, we were executioners. I stood at the observation window, hands clasped behind my back, staring at the swirling gas giant that hung over Gorvex Prime, their home world. Dark green clouds roiled in its upper atmosphere like a living organism. 3 moons orbited it, each of them military platforms covered in orbital guns, gravity slings, and AI kill drone nests. They thought we'd hit one of their outer colonies first. Wrong, we were here to set the tone. My second in command, Commander Reeves, approached without speaking. He didn't have to say anything. The tactical display hovering in the air behind him showed the same thing I already knew. The Gorvak fleet was scrambling, disorganized. Their patrols had picked up our emergence, but they hadn't expected this scale. 1,000 ships, maybe 10,000. Possibly not 500,000. Begin launch sequence, I said. Reeves didn't hesitate. He nodded and relayed the order to the command officers, who began transmitting across the vast-worked fleet. Dozens of fleet admirals received the directive. Thousands of captains confirmed launch. Vectors, automated ships came online, their AI cores warring to life with singular purpose: destroy everything. Weapons free. 2 words, that's all it took to start a war that would scar the galaxy forever. The Revenant shuddered as the first wave of torpedoes launched from our forward batteries. Plasma bolts the size of buildings streaked through the void toward the closest moon. 10 seconds later, the automated dreadnoughts began their bombardment. I watched without blinking as the first Gorvak moon shattered, their orbital station ignited like a dying sun. Fire bleeding out into space as hundreds of small escape pods tried to flee. We didn't target the pods, not because we were merciful, because we wanted witnesses. Survivors would tell the others what they saw here. Fear would do half the work for us. Reeves leaned in. Incoming comms from Gorvak's command. I turned slowly. What are they saying? He pulled up the feed. They're asking for terms. They say this was a misunderstanding, that they regret New Antioch. They blame it on a rogue battalion not authorized by the central government. My jaw tightened. The rage came back, like it always did, hot and thick, crawling up my throat like bile. I remembered the children burning, the silence after the bombing, my father's broken corpse under that steel sheet. I stepped forward, leaned in toward the comms display, and let them see my face. No terms, I said. You started. This will finish it. Then I cut the channel. The bridge was quiet again. The crew respected that. Within minutes, the second and third moons were reduced to rubble. One tried to launch a planetary shield. We penetrated it with a volley of Hypervelocity rounds, each one moving at nearly 12% the speed of light. Shield flared, cracked, and collapsed. Like glass under a hammer, the Gorvak began launching their own fleets, ugly spined vessels covered in organical-looking armor, weapons that fired in strange arcs designed to counter smaller, lighter ships, but they weren't prepared for our scale. They were ants fighting a flood. The ISV Daggerfall opened up with her rail cannons, slicing one of their capital ships clean in half. You could see the pressurized atmosphere venting in real time, glowing debris trailing behind like blood in water. The rest of the fleet swarmed in like wolves. I didn't watch for long. Instead, I pulled up the targeting array. For Gorvex Prime, the planet itself was still untouched. Their defense grid hadn't even powered up fully yet. It was as if they couldn't believe what was happening. Arrogance had made them slow. That would be their second mistake. Their first was burning my home. Status of the Omega-class bombardment platforms, I asked. Reeves tapped into the network, online and ready there, requesting final authorization. I didn't blink. Fire. 5 ships, just 5. Each one the size of a small city. Each carrying a payload designed to collapse tectonic structures from orbit. We didn't just want to destroy cities. We wanted to make the planet uninhabitable for the next 10,000 years. The bombardment began. One city, Koster, their spiritual capital, was hit first. The blast radius incinerated 20 million Gorvaks in 2.6 seconds. The seismic shock tore across the continent, causing structures thousands of km away to topple. Another strike hit their naval foundries, shipyards the size of continents cracked and collapsed into the oceans. The third targeted a breeding complex, cold, calculated, cruel. I won't lie and say it didn't feel good. The galaxy didn't understand something about us, something fundamental. Humans are not the strongest. We are not the smartest, not the most advanced, not the most efficient. But when you take something from us, really take it, when you hurt us deeply enough, we don't just retaliate, we exterminate. The next hours were chaos. Gorvex ships tried to retreat. We hunted them one by one. Some surrendered. We disabled their engines and left them drifting. Every single one programmed to broadcast the same signal. This is what happens when you burn a human world. The news spread faster than light. By the time we finished the first wave, 12 other species had already begun peace transmissions to Earth. The Galactic Assembly, silent for years, while we begged for justice, suddenly called an emergency summit. Too late. We weren't interested in their resolutions anymore. Back on the Revenant, the command crew monitored the aftermath. A burning planet, scattered, leaderless enemy, a galaxy trembling at the edge of their seats, wondering what Earth would do next. I walked the halls alone that night. It should have felt like victory, but all I saw in my mind were the faces of new Antioch, my neighbors, my childhood friend who taught me to fish in the Crater Lake, the old man who ran the bookstore and used to give me free hard covers, my father. None of them were coming back. Revenge wasn't resurrection, but maybe it was enough for now. Reeves found me near the observation deck hours later. He said nothing at first, just stood beside me, watching the swirling remains of Gorvex Prime. Commands asking what our next move is. He said. I didn't look at him. Are there any colonies left? Yeah, outer ring. Unarmed civilians mostly. I nodded slowly. Then we wait. He blinked. Wait for what? I turned to him, voice calm. For them too. Send someone to beg. He stared at me a long time, then finally he nodded. That was the difference between them and us. They thought victory meant destroying a fleet. We knew victory was breaking a species, and we were just getting started. The news spread like wildfire before our warships even finished vaporizing the last of the Gorvek satellites. We were already the most feared name in the galaxy, not respected, not admired. Feared. The Galactic Assembly, once smug and dismissive of Earth's young aggression, had changed its tone overnight. For years they'd laughed at humanity's expansion, said we were too emotional, too reactive, unstable. Now they whispered our name like it was a curse. Earth, the death world, the unforgiving race, and I became the face of that fear. They called me a dozen things. Commander of the dead, the warlord of New Antioch, the butcher from Saul. Every time a new broadcast aired in some alien language, it came with my face on the screen, blank stare, burned eyes. No mercy. I didn't care. Let them fear me. Let the galaxy choke on the ashes of their arrogance. The council back on Earth tried to maintain diplomacy at first, civilized terms, measured response, strategic retaliation. But after the footage hit the public net, after every Earth citizen saw the burned corpses of our children on New Antioch, after they saw the planet shattering strikes we delivered in return, there was no turning back. This wasn't about justice anymore. This was about power, and power only speaks one language: force. We didn't recall the fleet. We expanded it. In 6 months, another 120,000 ships joined the armada. New weapons, new AI, new captains, most of them survivors or orphans from lost colonies, men like me, men who didn't believe in treaties, men who believed in legacy through dominance. I became the head of it all. The council tried to reassign me once, some suit back in Geneva thought I was too volatile for long-term command. He was gone within the week. Not by my order, but the Senate itself stepped in. He's the symbol now, they said. We don't pull symbols off the battlefield. No one questioned it again. Our next move wasn't war, not directly. It was silence. We parked half the fleet on the edge of Thexian space, another race that had supplied weapons to the Gorvaks. During their assault on New Antioch, we didn't fire a shot. We didn't send a diplomat. We just sat there like wolves outside a gate. Within 72 hours, the elders broadcasted an unconditional surrender. They disarmed their fleet, handed over access to every shipyard. They had ceded control of 6-star systems to Earth Command without a single negotiation. Why? Because they thought we'd erase them next. And honestly, they weren't wrong to think that. Reeves stood beside me on the bridge when their surrender came in. They're offering mineral rights to the Celian Belt, full data archives, and peace monument on their capital. I didn't smile, didn't blink. Reject the monument. He looked at me. Why? Because we don't want peace, I said. We want memory. Let them remember the silence that followed our ships. Let them remember the weight of waiting for death that never came. That kind of fear lasts generations. The whispers started soon after that. I wasn't fully human anymore, that I was part AI, that I'd merged my mind with the ship. Some said I hadn't slept in years. Others believed I didn't feel anything. Anymore, most of it was false except the sleep part. I barely slept. And when I did, I dreamed of fire. Of my father's mug still clenched in his hand, of children's screams fading under rubble, of the sky on New Antioch, painted in red, torn by foreign warships. People said revenge wouldn't fix anything. They were wrong. It fixed everything. A few months later, the assembly tried to push back, not militarily. Politically, they claimed Earth's new domination tactics were destabilizing galactic diplomacy, that we were becoming worse than the aggressors we defeated. They called for sanctions, alliances, joint fleets to ensure no single power could control trade or military routes, but it was too late for all that, because by then we controlled half of them already, and the rest they were too afraid to say no. They'd seen what happened to the Gorvak, watched it in HD. Entire civilizations wiped in hours. The scale, the precision, the fury. They couldn't risk Earth turning that fury on them. One assembly rep from the Hilarion cluster tried to call our actions barbaric. I sent him a personal message. No threats, no insults, just a video of the school on New Antioch burning. He never spoke publicly again, but not all humans were with us. That's the part no one wants to talk about. Back on Earth, some started protesting. They said we were going too far, that we were becoming tyrants, that we'd lost our souls. Academics, journalists, politicians too soft to understand what it takes to protect something once it's been broken. I didn't respond to them. I let Earth's people do that. And they did, with riots, fist fights in universities, blackouts in cities where anti-fleet broadcast played. Even the council stopped issuing official condemnations. They knew where the wind was blowing. We weren't the victims anymore. We were the storm, but storms don't last forever. Not without breaking something, and I knew it was coming. The crack, the fracture inside me. I'd been hiding behind orders and objectives and redacted mission files. It hit me on an unremarkable day, orbiting a dead moon. In the dream system, one of the newer officers, Lieutenant Harrow, approached with data logs from a former Gorvak's research station. Standard sweep. I didn't care until I saw what they'd found. Footage from New Antioch, real-time drone feeds taken during the attack. Not from orbit, from within the colony. Ground-level shots, faces, screams, people I knew. I watched one feed on loop for nearly an hour. A young girl, maybe 5 or 6, hiding under a transport module while fire raged around her. She was clutching a stuffed animal. Dirt on her cheeks, blood on her arm. She didn't cry, she just stared, waiting for something that never came. I broke right there in my quarters, punched a hole in the steel wall, screamed until my throat cracked, threw a chair so hard it embedded itself into the floor plating. For the first time since the attack, I felt weak. I hated it. I wanted that rage back, but all I had was grief and guilt, because no matter how many fleets I burned, how many planets we reduced to dust, how many enemies we erased, she was still dead. And so was my father. And so was the colony, and I couldn't bring them back. I buried that footage deep, wiped it from the official logs, gave Harrow a medal, and sent him off to a promotion track. Told him it was classified. He didn't ask questions, but that night I stood on the command deck, alone, watching the stars, and for the first time since the war started, I asked myself a question I'd buried long Ago, what am I becoming? Not just to the enemy, but to my own people, to Earth. To myself. The next morning I met with Reeves. We began drawing up Phase 3. A new strategy, not just domination through force, but control through fearful loyalty. We wouldn't need to fire another shot if we made sure the galaxy never forgot. New shipyards would be built in every claimed sector. Human governors would oversee trade routes. Local leaders would be advised by Earthborn command officials, and every new system we acquired, we'd build monuments, not to peace, not to heroes, but to new Antioch. Every species, every child, every civilization in the galaxy would see the name etched into stone. They would ask what it meant, and they would learn. They started calling me Commander Eternal. I didn't like it, but no one cared what I liked anymore. I was a myth, now a symbol, a walking ghost made of steel and fire. People whispered about me across entire systems, some in awe, some in fear, and a few in quiet, festering hate. But it didn't matter. We owned the stars, 300 systems under Earth's grip. 17 alien governments collapsed or absorbed. 12 trillion lives bowed their heads when Earth warships passed overhead. No resistance, no rebellion, just quiet obedience. I'd won, but I couldn't sleep. There's a silence that comes after conquest. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like standing in a graveyard long after the battle's over and realizing all the noise, the explosions, the shouting, the orders was the only thing keeping you from hearing what was inside you all along. For me, that silence screamed. I kept hearing her, the girl under the transport module, not her voice, just her eyes. The way she looked at the world, like it had already ended, like she'd accepted her death before it even came. Some days I'd catch myself staring at reflections, not out of vanity, just trying to remember what I used to look like before the war, before I became the man who made death a language. What stared back at me wasn't human anymore. Earth had changed too. The citizens loved the power, the control, the respect. But respect given out of fear is never real, and the people knew it deep down. They knew. I started seeing signs of rot beneath the glory. Bureaucrats hoarding power in reclaimed sectors, fleet officers running their zones like empires, trade routes taxed into poverty, while Earth's inner cities glittered like gods lived there. And worst of all, no one questioned it because they were afraid of me, afraid I'd send a fleet, afraid I'd bury their cities in silence. Even my own commanders treated me like I was untouchable. Reeves stopped offering suggestions. The bridge officer sat straighter when I walked in. They never smiled, never joked. It felt like ruling a kingdom of mannequins. I missed being just a man. Then came the Levant uprising, the first real spark of rebellion in nearly a year. Small colony, former trade hub on the edge of Tarsus space, human settlers born long after New Antioch who didn't remember the fire, didn't feel the sting. They saw our fleets as oppressors, not protectors. They hijacked a comm tower and sent out a message: we are not your cattle. You don't own the stars. We will not bow. It spread fast, the kind of bold, suicidal message that resonates in systems growing tired of heavy boots. Command wanted to bomb them from orbit. I vetoed it, not out of mercy, out of curiosity. I flew there myself. The ISV Revenant hovered in low orbit. For 3 days, I didn't send a fleet, just a single escort ship. I walked into the Capitol Hall, unarmed, wrapped in a black Earthfleet officer's cloak, and stared into the faces of the men who dared raise their heads. There were maybe 40 of them, young, thin, poor, one of them a man barely in his 20s spoke first. "You're not a god," I nodded. "I never said I was." "You think you scare us?" "No," I said. "I think fear kept you alive this long." He laughed, genuine and bitter. "You used to fight for justice," he said. "Now you kill for convenience." That one hit because it wasn't entirely wrong. I let him talk. I let them all speak. And then I said only one thing before I left. "You still think you're free. You're not. You're just lucky I still remember what grief feels like. I didn't bomb them. I left them there to rot in the cold of their own pride. But the spark had caught, and I knew more would follow. The council sent messages urging me to crack down harder. Demonstrate strength, they said. Reinforce fear, send a message. They didn't understand what I already knew. The real war was starting, not between species, not between fleets, but inside Earth, inside our command, inside me. Reeves noticed it first. He approached me one evening in the command chamber. No formal salute, no protocol, just that tired, heavy look I hadn't seen in years. "You haven't been sleeping." I didn't answer. He continued, softer this time. "It's not over for you, is it?" "No," I said. "It never was." He hesitated, then stepped closer. "We've taken everything. No one dares fight us, but you're still looking for something to burn." I turned to him, eyes dead flat. "I don't burn for pleasure. I burn so no one forgets." "Is that what this is?" he asked. "Reminder." I didn't answer because I didn't know anymore. The turning point came 3 weeks later. Rogue Earth Commander, Admiral Juna, went off script. She glassed an entire colony in the Helios sector after they refused to send tribute shipments, human and alien alike. 2 million lives gone in 20 minutes without my authorization. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. "They defied us," she said, smiling. "We taught them." Something snapped in me. That smug face, that cruel ease, the way she wore my doctrine like armor. I realized what I'd created, not unity, not strength, but a machine without conscience. I had her arrested, public trial broadcast on every frequency across every sector. I stood as judge, and I sentenced her to death, not for killing, but for forgetting why we fight. The response was instant. Thousands cheered, but some didn't. Some saw it as weakness, cracks in the armor. A few admirals began whispering. They said I was losing my edge, that I was too emotional, that I'd gone soft. I didn't care. Let them test me. They'd find out the same thing the Gorvax did. There's no such thing as a soft man who's already buried everything he ever loved. But alone in my quarters, I kept returning to that same question. Was this vengeance or addiction? I told myself for years that I was doing this for justice, for New Antioch, for my father. But New Antioch was gone. My father was dust, and I'd already burned the ones who did it. So why was I still here? Why did I still keep the fleet moving? Why was I still watching rebel channels, waiting for another excuse to strike? Maybe because war gave me purpose, and peace left me empty. One night I opened the sealed archive, the last footage of New Antioch, the girl under the holler. I paused the video on her face, and for the first time in years, I whispered a name. Lena. She didn't have a name in the files, but I gave her one because I Needed her to be real. I needed the pain. To stay alive, I closed my eyes and imagined her living, laughing, growing up, learning to read, falling in love. And then I remembered what the Gorvac took, and I remembered what I became. Because of it, not a hero, not a monster, something in between. By dawn, I made a decision. The fleets would stand down, not retreat, not disarm, but stop expanding. Let the galaxy sit in silence. Let them wonder what we'll do next. Let them live with the shadow we left, because we've already won, and some victories don't need to be repeated, they just need to be remembered. The silence should have been peace. That was the lie we told ourselves, that if we hit hard enough, fast enough, deep enough, everything would settle, that fear could build stability. But fear doesn't settle, it rots like a wound you never clean. We'd made the galaxy bow, but the longer it stayed on its knees, the more it hated the hand holding it down. And now that hand was starting to tremble. The first signs were quiet. Fleet drone intercepted an unauthorized transmission from Sector 19, a minor trading post out of the way. Nobody important, but the message wasn't random. It was encrypted in old Earthfleet code. My code. Whoever sent it had served under me, or studied me, or worse, used my name as their shield. The message was short. The fire that defends can also consume. He forgets. That was it. No sender, no location. Ping, just those words, like a whisper from the past. Reeves read it and glanced at me across the command table. What do you want to do? Nothing, I said. He frowned. Nothing. If they want to question my memory, I said, then let them remember what happens when I respond. But I was thinking about it more than I wanted to admit. That phrase, he forgets, kept echoing in my skull, like someone was reaching into the place I'd buried Lena, into the silence I'd built for myself, and tapping on the coffin I'd put my humanity in. I didn't forget, I just couldn't afford to feel it anymore. Earth Command was fracturing. They didn't say it out loud, but I could see it in the briefings. Each sector commander issuing orders with slightly different protocols, some ignoring central command entirely, building private fortresses in their regions, others growing loyal to their admirals, not to Earth. Power had spread too far, and I couldn't be everywhere. We were still united by fear, but fear is like fuel, burns bright fast and leaves nothing but ash, and ash doesn't obey orders. I convened the War Council for the first time in months, not the bureaucrats in Geneva, not the faces in suits, the real power. 12 fleet commanders, every one of them hardened by blood, every one of them a killer who'd helped me turn the galaxy black and red. We sat in silence aboard the ISV Revenant's war chamber. Circular table, no walls, just projections of space around us, endless quiet space. I called you, I said, because Earth is bleeding under the armor. No one spoke. I continued. The fire we started, it's burning the edges of our own house now. Sector 19's gone dark. Tarsus has governors claiming divine mandate. The Leviathan program in Thalax is rerouting supply chains without authorization, and most of you know it. Still nothing, so I turned to Admiral Dent. Your sector's been stockpiling AI drones beyond your requisition limit. Explain. He stared back at me, stone-faced. We've had pirate raids. No pirate fleet has cracked a dreadnought perimeter in 5 years. Still had to be ready. Number preparing for something else. The silence was sharp now, like the room itself was holding its breath. I spoke. Again, softer. We built this empire on death. That's the truth, but now you're all afraid of what happens if I fall, afraid that without me, the whole thing collapses. Dent didn't deny it. Maybe we are. That was the first crack. Not in him, in the unity we'd forged. I dismissed them with no further words, no threats, no orders, just let them go. Because I knew what was coming next. Loyalty tests, defections, assassins. It wouldn't come today, maybe not tomorrow. But it was coming, and the scariest part, I didn't know if I wanted to stop it. Back in my quarters, I played Lena's footage again. Every night I told myself I'd delete it. Every night I didn't. She was the only thing keeping the rage alive, but now even the rage felt hollow. What was I doing all this for? The galaxy had been punished. Gorvax were extinct. Earth stood unchallenged. So why did I feel like the war was just beginning? A report came in from a fringe world in the Aurorin cluster. An Earth governor had been found dead, his body dragged through the capital city by citizens waving their former colony's flag. They burned the Earth fleet emblem in the streets, chanting in multiple languages, "Let him bleed like we did." The footage went viral. Even the firewalls couldn't contain it. It wasn't just a spark anymore. It was a match in a dry forest. Reeves came to me that evening, silent as always, but with that same heaviness in his shoulders I'd come to recognize. "What is it?" He dropped a file on the table. "Assassination protocol was activated on you this morning." I raised an eyebrow. Attempted number failed before it started. Someone planted a listening AI in the central Concord. It was isolated and purged, but they were close, too close. I nodded. He didn't say anything else, but I knew what was behind his eyes. It wasn't just the enemy anymore. It was us, our own. That night I made a decision, the kind of decision that rips history down the middle. I recorded a message, not to the council, not to the commanders, to everyone, every world, every system, every citizen under Earthfleet jurisdiction. I stared into the recording lens, dead-eyed, unshaven, worn down to the bone, and I spoke. "This is Commander Varric. You know my name. You know my war. You've lived under my fire, and you've survived because of it. But survival is not enough anymore. I did what I had to do. I built an empire so that no child would ever burn the way Lena did, so that no father would hold a blood-stained mug and die screaming into the dirt. But I see what we've become, and I won't let this empire rot under my name. To the ones who defy Earth, know this: I understand you. To the ones who exploit it, I'm coming for you. And to the ones waiting for me to fall, I'm not falling. I'm rising again. But this time, I rise not as your executioner, but as your reckoning. I ended the message, sent it to the stars. Then I stripped every protocol code I had and transferred them into a secure file. One last contingency in case even I lost control, because deep down I knew what was coming: a civil war, not between planets, not between species, but between the man I had become and the man I used to be. Power has a half-life, even the kind built on fear and fire, and mine, it was starting to decay. After my broadcast, I expected panic, expected rebellions to quiet down, expected Earth fleet to rally behind my words like they always did, but they didn't. Instead, I got silence, not the kind that comes before peace, The kind that comes before mutiny. 2 days after the transmission, a report came in from Sector 8. Admiral Caston had locked down 3 communication hubs and declared martial control over every planetary governor in her region. No authorization, no coordination with Earth Command, no response to direct pings from the Council. She hadn't declared rebellion, but she wasn't hiding what she was doing either. A soft coup. Her sector's been stable, Reeves said, looking over the data with a clenched jaw. No unrest, no threats. This wasn't a reaction, it was a move. She's testing me, I said. He nodded. Or replacing you, quietly. I stared out at the stars beyond the ISV Revenant's observation deck. I gave these people a future, I said quietly, and now they think they're gods because they wear my fire like armor. Reeves didn't say anything. He didn't need to, because we both knew what came next. I summoned Cass into orbit. She refused, said she was preoccupied with regional stabilization, so I sent a secondary order: stand down, deactivate her local AI-controlled drone fleet, and open access back to Earth Central archives. She ignored that too. Then I sent a strike team. They never returned. Signal lost over Karen 4. Last known position was entering the suborbital command ring that Caston had converted into her personal fortress. That's when I made the decision. And this time I didn't broadcast it. No more messages, no more warnings, just war. Fleet Segment 11, under my direct command, dropped into Caston space 3 days later. 4,000 warships, no planetary bombardment, no civilian targets. This was a surgical hit. Commander versus Commander. Everything I taught her, I was about to turn against her. Battle lasted 19 hours. She fought harder than I expected, used tactics I designed myself, predicted half my movements, countered 2 of my flanks perfectly, but she forgot one thing. I don't fight like a tactician anymore. I fight like a ghost with nothing left to lose. At 300 Earth Standard, I personally led the breach of her flagship, the ENV Tyrant, fitting name. She was waiting for me on the command deck, flanked by 2 AI shock troopers, fully armed, no helmet, eyes calm. You never could let go, she said. I let go of everything a long time ago, I replied. She took a step forward. And now what? You kill me and call it loyalty? No, I said, I kill you and call it a reminder. Then I put a round through her kneecap. She dropped like stone, screaming. I walked up to her, pressed the barrel to her temple. She spat blood on the floor and whispered, "You're scared." I didn't deny it, because she was right. I didn't execute her, not yet. I dragged her to the Revenant in cuffs and locked her in solitary under triple sealed command AI guard. She'd get her trial, public, painful like the one I gave Admiral Juna. The message would be clear. Earth has one voice and it's still mine. But the message came at a cost. In the following weeks, 3 more admirals pulled their fleets into isolation. They didn't disobey yet, they just stopped responding, stopped syncing their data, started issuing commands without consulting Earth Central. They were building silos, preparing for sides, and that was the moment I realized I was no longer leading an empire. I was managing a cult of warlords, each one dressed in Earthfleet black, each one swearing loyalty to me with their mouths while carving out their own kingdom with their hands, and I had no idea which ones would pull the knife first. The Council Back on Earth offered me political retirement, said I'd done enough that my image would remain honored. That perhaps it was time for civilian leadership. I laughed so hard I nearly broke the table. These people only listen to one thing, I said, voice like ice. Me, and what happens when they stop? The prime counselor asked, her voice quiet, almost pitying. Then I remind them. She leaned forward, and when they stop fearing the reminder, I didn't answer because she already knew. That night, Reeves came to me privately. He looked older than he had in years. You're losing them, he said. I know. He hesitated. You can still step away. I looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anger. Just exhaustion. You think this was ever about me? He didn't answer. This fleet isn't just ships, it's trauma. I said, it's every child who watched their home burn. Every soldier who buried their family under alien soil. I'm just the shadow they follow. You cut off the shadow and the rage stays, but now it's leaderless. So you're keeping them in line. I'm keeping the galaxy from burning again. He nodded slowly, but I saw something in his eyes. Doubt, the same kind I used to have before I burned it out of myself. Caston's trial was scheduled 2 weeks later. The broadcast went live across all Earthfleet networks. She stood, restrained, face bruised, blood dried around her mouth. I watched from the viewing deck above the court. She never pleaded, never begged. She looked up at me once during the verdict. Her mouth didn't move, but her eyes said it. You've already lost. The court sentenced her to death. The crowd erupted, but I stayed silent because her eyes were right. That night I slept deep, heavy, dreamless, and when I woke up, Reeves was gone. He left a simple message. You led us through fire, but now we burn everything in our path. I can't follow that anymore. He didn't run. He defected to where I didn't know, but I knew this. He had the knowledge, the access, and the loyalty of thousands, and if he stood against me, the galaxy might split in two. This wasn't about New Antioch anymore. It wasn't about vengeance. This was about what happens to a sword when the war is over and it's too bloodstained to hang on the wall. This was about the monster I created to protect humanity, and whether I had the strength to kill it, even if that monster was me. They called it the Gray Fleet. At first it was a rumor, whispers from deep systems beyond Earth fleet jurisdiction, a rogue band of ships moving through dead zones, no emblems, no transponders, but moving with discipline, with structure, with purpose. I knew what it was before the analysts confirmed it. Reeves hadn't disappeared. He was building an army. The data came in through a captured cargo hauler from the Malkran stretch, burned, barely functional, but inside its transmission buffer was a coded distress beacon, once used only by fleet corps officers. It pinged a location, Echoes Sector 7. Uninhabited, resource-scarred, long abandoned after the mining wars. No population, no oversight, perfect hiding ground. My war council debated response options. Recon only. Send a shadow unit. Monitor communications. I overruled them all. If it's Reeves, I said, we don't observe, we face it. Admiral Ferris folded his arms with respect. Commander, if Reeves has gone rogue, then you confronting him personally may be exactly what he wants. Then let him want it. I turned to my officers, eyes sharp. Prepare the Revenant. We're jumping in 48 hours. As we traveled, I kept watching the sky. The stars always felt cold to me, even in victory, even surrounded by fleets. But now they felt heavier, like they were watching me back. I stood alone in the observation deck, most nights staring into the void, thinking about how many ships I'd buried, how many enemies I'd vaporized, how many admirals I'd executed under my own command. And now, Reeves, the only one I never wanted to become my enemy, and yet here we were. When we dropped into Echo Sector 7, we found no resistance at first, just floating silence, ghost signals, debris. The carcass of a long-dead mining freighter rotated slowly in the void, its hull pocket marked with laser burns from a forgotten war. But then came the scan pings, hundreds of them silent, coordinated, patterned like a neural signal net. Reeves was watching us. I walked to the central ops table and waited. I didn't raise shields, didn't issue firing orders. I just opened a direct comm. Reeves, I said, static. Then you shouldn't have come. His voice calm, still that quiet steel behind it, but colder now, older. You turned your back on everything we built, I said. I turned my back on what it became. I leaned forward. You defected. No, he replied. I remembered. He sent a signal. A second later, half a dozen warships dropped out of FTL behind the mining field. Mate. Black, no Earth fleet markings, silent but active. I recognized the design. Modified dreadnoughts, repurposed AI platforms. He'd been busy. You built a fleet, I said. Number I'm built a choice. We met in person on neutral ground, a decommissioned space station orbiting a fractured moon. No guards, no weapons, just two men, old and tired, staring at each other across a steel table. He looked different. Beard grown in, lines in his face deeper, but his eyes were still the same. Why? I asked him. Reeves leaned back, hands folded. Because this empire was never supposed to last. I frowned. We brought unity, order, peace. No, he said. We brought silence, fear. And you mistook submission for loyalty. He reached into his coat and pulled out a data shard. This is from Sector 3. Food riots, Earthfleet troops opening fire on civilians. I didn't blink. Isolated incident. Really? Because I have 18 more just like it. People aren't safe, they're just quiet, afraid you'll orbit bombard them if they raise their voices. I stared at him. And what would you have done? Let the galaxy burn again? Reeves looked straight through me. Remember, I would have let the pain speak before we drowned it in fire. He was offering surrender, not his. Mine. He wanted me to step down, to dissolve Earthfleet executive hold, to pull the warships back, to build something collaborative. Humanity doesn't need to rule through fear anymore, he said. We've made our point. I laughed, dark and bitter. You think that point lasts forever? You think memory is enough? I watched the galaxy look away while New Antioch burned. You want to trust them again? I want to trust us again, he replied. I leaned in. You're building a resistance. He didn't deny it. You're trying to save them from me. He didn't flinch. You think you can win, and this time, he spoke slowly, I think someone has to try. We left without violence, no fleets clashing, no battle cries, just two men who once buried friends together, now drawing lines across the stars. But as I boarded the Revenant again, I knew what had just happened. The next war had started, and this time it would be human against human. Back in command, I ordered silent tracking protocols. No official engagement, not yet, but if Reeves moved To recruit from within fleet ranks, we'd cut the defectors out before they spread. Admiral Ferris suggested covert black ops, plant bombs, sabotage the gray fleet, eradicate the rebellion before it became a legend. I didn't respond at first. Then I walked to the command console, stared at the fleet manifest. 500,000 ships, all still loyal for now. If we start killing our own, I said. Slowly, we validate everything they fear. Ferris looked confused. So, what's the play? I turned, voice flat. We let them speak. He blinked. What? They want to stir the people, I said. Let them show the cost of their defiance. Let them make promises. We'll make them bleed without lifting a finger. Within weeks, small colonies began defecting, silent at first, no violence, just changed calm frequencies. Stopped sending tributes, sent coded messages to the Gray Fleet. By month 2, a dozen systems had stopped responding to Earth Fleet channels. I didn't attack, I waited, let the fractures widen, let Reeves make speeches, let his new Earth grow. Because I knew the deeper he dug his roots, the easier it would be to rip them out when I was ready. But deep down, a part of me hesitated. Because I'd seen Reeves's eyes, and he wasn't building power, he was building hope. That's what made him dangerous. More than fleets, more than bombs. Hope can't be shot out of the sky. It has to be killed up close. They struck at dawn. Not with fleets, but with whispers. System after system, governors went silent, command relays stopped syncing. Trade routes rerouted, entire battalions vanished from Earth Fleet's manifest. Reeves had moved, and I knew what that meant. He was done waiting. I stood on the bridge of the Revenant, watching Earth Fleet's command web stutter. In the corner of the main display, red lights bloomed like sickness. 13 sectors have shifted alignment. Admiral Ferris said, local forces have declared for Reeves' new accord. I didn't answer because I knew what came next. Reeves wasn't building a rebellion, he was building a second Earth. The War Council fractured within 48 hours, half called for surgical strikes, burn the traitor worlds, make examples. The other half warned against overreach, claimed we'd feed Reeves. Narrative said we'd only make him stronger. The same mouths that used to beg for my approval now shouted across the table, pointing fingers, threatening desertion. I sat at the head, silent, until finally I stood. You've all forgotten, I said, voice sharp as a blade, forgotten what they did to us, forgotten how the galaxy watched New Antioch burn and did nothing. Someone muttered, that was years ago. I slammed my fist into the table hard enough to crack it. It was yesterday, I shouted, and every man who buried a daughter and every child who watched their home turn to ash, and every one of you who followed me through hell, it still burns. Silence. I don't care how many banners Reeves raises or what he calls his little dream. I will not let him rewrite what we paid for in blood. I walked out without dismissing them. Let them sit in my silence and decide which side they were really on. That night the Revenant moved. We jumped to Sigma Orlia, the nerve center of Reeves' new accord, not a capitalist symbol, a former Earth Fleet base now turned sanctuary. It was where he broadcast his speeches, where he rallied defectors, where he built his image as the Redeemer. He made it look clean, software, civilized. But I knew what it really was, a throne built on my ruins. I didn't order full-scale bombardment. Number this was Personal, I was going down there myself. I landed alone, just like I had when I visited the Levant uprising. No guards, just rage and steel in my chest. The city was clean, bright, a fake utopia of soft lights and carefully staged banners. Reeves was waiting at the central square. He didn't run. He stood on a wide platform, hands behind his back. Dressed in simple gray, his face had changed. He wasn't tired anymore. He was ready. "You finally came," he said. "You knew I would. I was hoping you wouldn't. I'm not here to debate. Then why come at all?" I stepped forward close enough to see the lines around his eyes, to remind you that I built the fire and I can still light it again. Reeves didn't flinch. "You've mistaken silence for order, but fear doesn't last, Commander, not forever." He paused, eyes locked to mine. "People follow me because they want to, not because they're scared of orbital strikes. Can you say the same?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because he was right. "You used to believe in something," he said quietly, "before the killing became the mission." I stared past him at the massive crowd gathering around the platform. Civilians, soldiers, former Earth fleet officers now loyal to him, watching, judging, waiting. "You think you can control what comes next?" I asked. "You think you'll hold them together when the next alien power threatens to burn your cities?" "I'll remind them what we survived, but I won't do it with a barrel pressed to their heads. And if they forget..." He took a breath. "Then we teach again, but not with fire. With truth." I looked at him, the man who once stood beside me in the ashes of New Antioch, and I said the only thing that was left to say. "Then one of us doesn't walk away from this." He nodded. "I know the duel wasn't formal, no audience commands, no showmanship, just two men on a platform beneath a fake sky." He drew first a modified plasma blade, standard Earth fleet issue. I followed an old carbon-forged combat knife from my first tour. He was faster, I was meaner. He landed the first cut across my ribs. I ignored the pain, stepped in, cracked his jaw with my elbow, and drove my knife into his shoulder. He staggered. Blood painted his uniform, but he didn't fall. We fought like brothers who had nothing left to say. His blade burned a line down my back. My knife tore through the meat of his thigh. He bled more. I breathed heavier. At one point he pinned me. "Why couldn't you stop?" he gasped, pressing the edge of his blade to my neck. "Because I remember," I growled and head-butted him so hard I saw stars. We both collapsed, panting, bleeding, broken. Around us the crowd was dead silent. I rolled to my knees, looked at him. "Finish it," he wheezed, but I didn't move because the rage was gone, and in its place exhaustion, not just in my muscles, in my soul. I stood up, looked at the people, all of them, then back to Reeves, and I said, "No more fire." He blinked. "What?" I turned to the crowd, raised my voice. "This was never supposed to become religion. I didn't burn the galaxy to be warped. I did it because I was broken, because no one else stood up when we were dying." I looked down at my hands, red, shaking. "And now I see it. We didn't build an empire. We built a prison for them, for us." I looked at Reeves. "You win." He tried to stand. His leg gave out. I caught him. Together we stood, two ghosts, two liars, two survivors. The transition took months. Some commanders refused to comply. A few declared independence. Others died in quiet purges. But the war never came because the fire didn't need to burn anymore, not when memory was enough. I didn't return to Earth, I left. The Revenant left the war, took a shuttle to the ruins of New Antioch. It's quiet there now, just wind and ash. And overgrowth. I walk the crater fields in silence, and every night I sit by the hill I buried my father under, and I talk to Lena. She never answers, but sometimes when the wind moves just right, I think she forgives.